say some things. So I've been listening, I've been watching, and I've been paying attention to what's been going on today in politics. And I got to tell you, I was like, I could wait until tomorrow and then jam pack all this stuff into a Wednesday show. But I feel like there's going to be even more shit that hits the fan before all this ends and wraps up. So I had to come in and say some things, discuss one of the things that it kind of went from emboldened to see what happened with some of these folks in Nebraska to then embarrassing to the way that Representative Mike Flood responded to what his constituents had to say to him in the state. So I wanted to discuss some of those things. I'm going to ramble a couple more seconds to see if you guys want to jump in really quick. What's up, Sean? Yes, it is 3:30. What the hell? I mean, it's going to be a sparse party, but it'll still be a watch party. So if you guys are here, I'm glad to see you here. Let's go ahead and make some good things happen in a few more minutes. I don't want you guys to miss the beginning of this because the way that this whole thing started kind of kicked things off for the energy that Representative Mike Flood had to deal with for I don't know how many hours or for an hour or maybe 15 to 20 minutes. This guy decided to speak to a bunch of folks who wanted to give him a piece of their mind and take a piece of his ass with them out the door. What's going on, Joey? What's going on, Natasha? And Captain Super Nightman, Michael McCullough, good to see you guys. Good afternoon. I mean, maybe you guys are more afternoon folks. Maybe you're not the midday type of people that want to discuss things, but we have to fit this in somewhere. Joey Clemente. Have I been pimping, Joey? I don't know, man. How you doing, Larry? Larry Haynes, also good to see you guys. I'm just gonna wait a couple more seconds, so hold on for a second. We're gonna get to the story. Actually, I have another one that connects right to it. So we only got a couple today. There will be new things going up on the page as we cut these all down. But before we start, don't forget, you guys, if you happened upon us, go ahead, subscribe to the page if you haven't yet. Like this stream, get more people knowing that it's happening, and tell your friends about it. Go ahead and share it as well. Joey Johnson says, how was your checkup? I'm good. I'm all right. The problem is it takes me a year to a year and a half to go. And I said, you know what? I have to do it. So I scheduled that and I went. I'm fine. Actually, behind the scenes, my mother texted. She called 2 times and she goes, is everything okay? What's going on? Are you okay? Because I didn't tell her anything. She just saw that I wasn't going to be here because I'm going in to get checked in. Scott Worthington, good to see you too. Missed you guys this morning. Let's get it started then right now. It won't be tons of you guys here, so let's just go ahead and go in. Joey, cool beans. Let's get started. All right, let's go. So Representative Mike Flood of Nebraska, as the Congress is on their recess now in August, they went back home and he did what he's actually supposed to do. You're supposed to go home, talk to your constituents, get some feedback, get some insight on how they're feeling about your performance so far during the year. I mean, it's the middle of summertime. It's really hot outside. Take a time, sit inside and discuss with your constituents how things are going. The problem with Mike Flood is that he's a Republican and the way things are going are not that good for him last night. Watch.
My question is fiscal. With 450 million FEMA dollars being reallocated to open Alligator Alcatraz and 600 million taxpayer FEMA dollars being used to now open more concentration camps and ICE burning through $8.4 million a day to illegally detain people, how much does it cost for fascism? How much do the taxpayers have to pay for a fascist country?
Americans went to the polls in November and they had a choice between a Democratic candidate that had an open border, no enforcement, fentanyl, drugs, human trafficking. And they had a choice between that and a candidate that said, close the border, get illegal immigrants out of our country. Stop the fentanyl, stop the human trafficking, stop the drugs, stop the crime, stop the violence. That's what Americans voted for. Americans voted for a border that is secure. And I support the president enforcing our immigration laws.
Representative Flood, the question was how many more hundreds of millions of dollars, billions of dollars are we going to pay for this fascism? Instead, he decided to talk about how we had a choice between 2 different people during the election. One is looking to open the borders and invite in drugs and crime and human trafficking. There's this guy that's in the White House who released a bunch of criminals. So let's check off the crime part. Oh, he's done nothing about the drug issue because, what are you doing? He's sent off some letters about prescription drugs. Is that the drug issue that he's talking about? Because last I checked, there's still drugs all over the streets. And also, there's this whole thing about human trafficking. This is probably one of the most infamous human traffickers of young girls and women ever in American history, and he's covering it up because he's a part of it. I get the feeling that Mike Flood is supporting the guy that he said is solving all those issues. They weren't done though. There's more happening at this town hall talking about the fascism that's been implemented, but they're going to continue to try and push this line that what they're doing is fighting against it when they're actually living it. Check this out.
I have read a dozen or so books on authoritarianism and fascism. You said in Seward that you were not a fascist. Your complicity says otherwise. Have you ever spoken out against this administration and its Project 2025, which is a fascist machine?
Fascists don't hold town halls with open question and answer series.
That's your answer, bro? So you're support of a fascist who's openly changing and taking over the judicial process, telling the Congress what to do, breaking all kinds of laws, taking people off the streets illegally, disrupting Americans' lives. So as he keeps trying to talk about how all of these illegals are being sent out of the country, he never discusses the people that are American citizens that are also being swept up, that are also being assaulted, that are also being harassed, along with folks who are going through the normal immigration process, which this party keeps talking about they're in support of, and sending them off to gulags in other countries, and threats against other actual American citizens that they'll be next. Oh, and let's talk about how they're changing over the ways that they're approaching political enemies and how they're attacking them in order to get the attention off of those same Jeffrey Epstein files that the current president is more than knee deep in. He's up to his neck in it. Dude was probably one of the ones that helped run the damn thing. But still, he's about to pardon Ghislaine Maxwell. Let's stop talking about how you're not in support of a fascist, especially since as you're answering those questions to rains of booze coming down on your head, your answers to make sure that you point out, and President Trump, and President Trump, and President Trump, and President Trump sounds like a dictatorship to me. This guy's getting his ass handed to him all over the place. I got a few more clips. This was great. They talked specifically, though, about actual issues outside of the fascism, some of the issues that are disrupting their lives, including the way they've gone after people's health care. Listen to the way this guy tried to cover for this.
It talks about two big changes to the Medicaid program. One of those changes is that if you are able to work and you are able-bodied, you have to work. If you choose not to work, you do not get free health care. You do not get free health care. Okay. So here's a question.
Here's the question.
Do you think that people who are 28 years old that can work and refuse to work should get free health care? I don't think that a majority of Nebraskans agree with you. It talks about...
I feel like majority of the people in that room disagree with you, Representative Flood. Actually, it's the framing and it's the way that they pose these types of points. A 28-year-old person who can work but refuses to work, should they get free health care? Well, who's this 28-year-old person? What kind of work have they done before? Why are they not working right now? There's this narrative that points out you lazy Americans are pieces of trash. I hate you. You never want to do anything except prop up billionaires. The fact that billionaires are consistently making record profits constantly over and over and over again, I think shows that Americans work. The only way a billionaire makes that much money is because people work for them hard as they sit there on their yachts and collect more money and find new ways to take tax breaks in order to gain more on their wealth. So as he's talking about a 28-year-old that doesn't want to work, what about some CEO that doesn't want to work? What about some billionaire that takes in more money because he bribes people like Mike Flood to give him more money, more opportunities to game the system and make more billions of dollars? They're not working. They've got too much money to care about the cost of healthcare. But the person that then get sick or is disabled or something, an accident happens to them, they lump them all in with these lazy people that they hate, that they say they want to represent, that if they don't work, they don't get any free health care. We all pay for this stuff, bro. We all pay for it. We just don't get what we're paying for, as they're looking to take more and more people off of Medicare and Medicaid. And as that happens more, and it's already starting to happen, it's going to be even more of a disaster. Actually, let's talk about his idea of how that might help people out. This was an actual question. They decided to ask him rather than just rain booze down on him. Someone decided to ask him, what is your plan, though, for these low income folks or folks who can't afford these high cost private health insurance plans? He doesn't understand the meaning of that because he's detached from the entire idea, because he's got way too much money to think about regular folks. Watch this.
What plans does the Congress have for providing reasonable cost health insurance to Nebraskans?
Well, one of the ways to bring down our commercial private payer insurance is to not have as many people on Medicaid. Because what happens? Medicaid pays a much lower reimbursement rate than a commercial payer does. And so when there's a difference between those two, the commercial payer ends up paying more and more and more to make up for the difference. Money does not fall out of the sky. It does not grow on trees. It comes from all of you. And you pay your health insurance. I wish there was a world we could live in where everything came from the government and it was free. But that will never, ever, ever happen. By the way, I do not believe that, but I do think, though, when you look at keeping our personal private, for those of you who are on commercial payer private health insurance, you're seeing 20% increases. And why is that? Because we've extended Medicaid to so many people who refuse to work, people who don't want to go to work, people that are illegal. And when you do that, everybody else has to pay. Somebody always has to pay. That's the way it works. It would be great to come to a town hall and have an answer that everybody would agree with, but that is the reality of our situation. The more you make healthcare free, the more everybody else with private pay insurance also has to pay.
They work strictly for the rich. They literally think that everyone has the same amount of money as the rich people who bribe them to say things like this. Let me recite what the question was. How are you going to put this forward where people can have reasonable cost health care? He says kick more people off of Medicaid. The same party that said we're not kicking anyone off of Medicaid and Medicare. The ones who said that over and over and over again and said that anyone who says that about them is an absolute liar. We're going to take down the ads that say so. But how is it suddenly that's their argument, that they're kicking people off of Medicaid so that they can help pay and lower the cost for private insurance? Private insurance, whose whole entire objective is to raise costs and make as much money as possible. That's what private entities do in the capitalistic society. They're looking to make money, except in this case, they look to make money off of people's health. And when you look to make money off people's health, you start running people out of it because the prices go up, because that's what happens when people look to make more and more and more, and an insatiable greed for more and more and more of it. If they want to make more and more tons of money off of some toys, people can decide not to buy toys because the shit got too high. But when it comes to their heart and their leg and their arm and their eyeball and their ears and something else that goes wrong, their cancer, that's something that they kind of have to go to the doctor for. And when they raise those rates on that, it kills people. But let's talk about how those rates may then be going down because the private entities are paying way too much because too many people, we've extended to lazy people who don't want to work and illegals. That's been dispelled a long time ago. Those types of programs are not offered to folks who are here undocumented. It just isn't the case. They made up that lie to make people hate the people that they've told them you're supposed to be afraid of, that are rapists, drug dealers, and criminals and coming into your house. It's all a part of, the plan to get you to be on board for your costs then going up. All of it is based in a lie. So one more part. So the commercial, as more people, as they said, kicking them off of their Medicaid, those folks can't afford private health care. And what then will happen is they'll turn emergency rooms, which has already been the case for a long time, into their doctor whenever something is disastrously finally wrong with them. And they still can't pay those exorbitant ER bills either. After that happens, who pays for that? Who pays for the amount of money that those doctors in the hospitals don't get reimbursed for? Because, we're taking money out of it and giving it to rich people. Those hospitals still close, people still get sick, and people end up in exorbitant amounts of debt. They think everybody just has money and they're hoarding it. They think someone that lives in the middle of Tennessee that doesn't have anything else outside of their home and their one car, they think that they're hoarding $500,000 underneath the mattress, because that's who they deal with. They look to serve the richest in our country. Talking about that money that they say they're taking in, someone asked them about how they're looking to pay down that debt that they said that they're looking to pay down off of our backs, potentially through these tariff policies that are a tax on regular Americans. Someone asked them about that too, and you won't be surprised to hear the boos rain down here too. Let's watch.
Given your full-throated support of the bill, whatever we call it, and your view of the facts, I'd like to know how you expect to pay back all of this debt that is going to be layered onto our grandchildren, because we're not willing to make our rich part of our society pay their fair share.
So what's interesting about that, and I think it's a fair question, two things are happening here. People in here are upset with me that I voted to cut $2 trillion in spending from the budget.
Given your
Could you see where he was going with that? As they're chanting tax the rich, and he completely ignored the question, he said, people are upset in this room, are upset with me because I want to cut more things from you to pay more of those rich people. I think you just confirmed his question. How are you going to pay down this debt if you continue to give money away to the rich? He said, you guys are mad at me just because I'm giving money away to the rich and I'm cutting programs that you paid for because I'm cutting those programs to give them more money. How could you be so upset at me? Bro, I think he was beginning to figure out that this ain't gonna go that well for him whenever he's up for election. And I should have looked it up to see how much more time he's got left, because they were chanting vote his ass out. They were chanting tax the rich as he was standing there with the shield in front of the rich going, I will defend you against these peasants that I'm stealing money from. They're so wrapped up into their bubbles, they really think this is some kind of a winning argument. The defender of the rich, Representative Mike Flood. I got a couple last moments that he had at this town hall where he tried to sound like he was on the side of some folks when it comes to some very important issues. And I want you to think back to his defense and his dismissal of this being a fascist regime in the White House. He thought he could be on people's side when he was asked about the Epstein files too. No.
Why are you covering up the Epstein files?
Let's be very clear. At the next pro forma session of the Congress, you'll find my name as a sponsor on a resolution from the House Rules Committee to release the Epstein files to protect the victims and not re-victimize them again. I support Jamie Comer, who is the House's Oversight Committee Chairman, subpoenaing Ms. Maxwell later this month to come testify in Washington. I am for the release of those records.
I think he thought he was going to get a good response there. But if people actually pay attention, first off, pay attention to what Mike Flood does as far as the Epstein files and the release of them, because they say a lot of things on TV and apparently here in front of audiences, how they're in favor of releasing those files. But as he mentioned, James Comer, who said he wants to release not the Epstein files, James Comer wanted to release the grand jury testimony, which doesn't do anything as far as who the folks are on that list. It's just talking about the way that they got to the two criminals that Donald Trump is covering up more of the crimes in the list of people who participated in that sex trafficking ring. That's what they're still covering up. He thinks it's some kind of trick he can pull on people that are waiting for the actual names and accountability to come down on them. So pay attention to what Mike Flood continues to do and if he's going to follow through on that promise, because I think he's trying to reel it in a little bit and make it seem like he cares. But again, if you're for the release of the Epstein files, why do you still support a president who absolutely is not? In fact, he said you guys are hyperventilating over it. He doesn't want your support if you want these released. Matter of fact, how could you? Why are you still talking about it? So, Mike, answer his question. If you're so in favor of releasing these, why are you still talking about it, bro? But he's the best president of all time. He's got the best plan. He's going to turn this country back on the right track. It's a bunch of mixed up signals that at the end of the day, the bottom line is protect Donald Trump. Pay attention to what Mike Flood continues to do there. Another part is as far as his disagreements with Donald Trump. Here he is talking about his firing, his, again, fascist move to fire the Bureau of Labor Statistics commissioner over a bad jobs report. A bad jobs report that only came because of his bad policies that are destroying people's lives. Watch.
I will say this, though. If all that person did was get the data out there, if all that, and I don't know that's the case, but if that's all they did, I would not have fired her. I mean, to be honest, but I don't know because things are complicated. It's easy to listen to a 30-second story on TV and think that you know all the details. I don't know all the details. But I'm sure we will be talking about that when I get back to Washington in September.
A U.S. congressman doesn't know how the Bureau of Labor Statistics works. A U.S. congressman doesn't realize that the commissioner of that same Bureau of Labor Statistics doesn't control the information and how it's released. He said if she was simply given that information and she releases it as she's the commissioner of that organization, of that department, then he wouldn't fire her. Where's the answer, bro? Because, you know, we've trusted those numbers on job growth or lack thereof in the past few months now. But your president, that same guy who you said is not a fascist because you're taking questions at a town hall because you're defending said fascist, you have no answer on whether or not it was right to fire her. I remember when it happened, I was like, oh, how often does this happen? How does this work? What does the commissioner of the Bureau of Labor Statistics do? I did this weird thing that Mike Flood apparently can't do. Let's read and find out how these things work. Or if you don't want to read, Mike, listen to the last couple commissioners of the Bureau of Labor Statistics and let them tell you how it usually works. Then you can come to some kind of conclusion where you don't have to be a coward and act like you don't have an answer for it because you don't want to cross the fascist in the White House. What a sorry ass this guy is. So as a matter of fact, this has been one of the main things people are talking about. This is where other folks then came in to try and defend this or write it off as something that wasn't as bad as it really was. As I was driving around today, I was listening to CNN and I heard Lisa McClain. She's a congresswoman from Michigan, Republican congresswoman from Michigan. And she was asked about how Mike Flood got his ass handed to him last night. And this was her answer. And I'm telling you, I was talking to myself in the car at the radio. And before she even answered this question, I recited it exactly. Watch.
You're traveling around the country, I know, Congresswoman, with other congressional Republicans to highlight Trump's so-called one big, beautiful bill. And I want you to watch what one of your colleagues, Congressman Mike Flood, heard from his constituents at a town hall just last night. Listen to this.
If you choose not to work, you do not get free health care. You do not get free health care.
Congressman Flood won that district by over 20 percentage points back in 2024. Recent polling has shown that the bill is unpopular, even among Republicans. Should this sort of response from voters that we saw last night at that town hall, should that worry Republicans?
No, and I think I need to correct one thing that you said is you talked about he had a town hall with his constituents. I wish that were true. As we know, the Democratic Party buses in a lot of people from outside his district. So I don't think that's a fair and accurate statement. However, let's talk about the one big beautiful bill.
She didn't want to talk about the response that Mike Flood got all night. Instead, she came up with the same tired line that, as we all know, I'm having trouble finding the source that's called "as we all know." The source of "as we all know" is Republican talking points to dismiss the fact that constituents are hell bent on telling them that they're screwing things up, and they continue to destroy people's lives as they try to protect this fascist, pedophile peddling president in the White House. That's what the constituents are telling you. But as we all know, Democrats bus in people that aren't really their constituents, as these people will come in and say, "I'm your constituent." But they're just liars. These stupid Americans, they're lazy, don't work, and the only way they're going to get their health care to live is to stop being lazy, stupid liars. They get bussed in because Democratic voters aren't real Americans. There's literally no good part of that answer. So I remember when it was Hillary Clinton, or even other Democrats that have said things like the deplorables and all that stuff. We had a box of deplorables, is what she said. They lost their minds. How could these Democrats call us deplorables? How could they? It's the worst thing ever. On a daily basis, these Republicans call regular Americans, people who don't vote for them, pieces of trash, not real constituents, lazy, not willing to work, pink-haired losers, all kinds of stuff. But they don't expect anyone else to talk about the disastrous ways that they're running this country. The way they insult Americans on a daily basis is something that we should probably do something about. But there's only one group of people in this country that can be insulted for being told that they're on the wrong side. But they can lay names out and say that they're fake voters all they want and think that's a winning argument. So she wanted to talk about the one big beautiful bill instead. And I honestly, there's not much defense to that either.
It is big and it is beautiful. And that's what we're doing, is we are going out on the road and we are correcting the truth with the other half of the truth. Because if you ask 82% of America, think if you deserve to have Medicaid and you're able to work, that you should work. That is a winning issue if you take a look at that issue in and of itself. The bulk of the American population believes that we should have secure borders. The bulk of the Americans do not want a tax increase. And that's what we did with the one big beautiful bill, is we made sure that the Democrats did not allow the biggest tax increase for working families in the history, because we know if you make under $50,000, if we didn't pass this bill, your taxes would have gone from 12% to 25%. What we have to do is we have to stop the fear mongering and go out and correct the truth with the other half of the truth. And that's exactly what we're doing. And what we're finding is when people understand it and they understand the truth, they are much more in favor of it.
Just because she calls her lies the truth does not make them the truth. 82% of Americans think that people should work for their health care. Which 82% of Americans did you get that number from? Just pulled it out of their asses. 82% of Americans think you should work. By the way, there's so many Americans that work and still don't get access to health care. What they call health care is, again, what they think is this exorbitant cost of things just to keep people alive. Their idea of affordable healthcare is so outrageous that they're like, what's wrong with you? Why can't you spend several $1,000s on a procedure? What's wrong with you? Why did your leg get injured? Why did you get cancer? I think there's something wrong with you. Again, and as they talk about these tax breaks, the way there's going to be this tax increase on so many Americans, again, there's this small thing you can do. You can look into the details of how this bill works. So in conjunction with the couple $100s of tax savings that they're looking to give to people that make $50,000 or less, as they're stripping away also in this same bill of this tax break bill that's actually benefiting the richest in the country, because that's how these things work. The aspects of this tax bill is they're eliminating what they're calling entitlement programs that you don't deserve because you're a lazy piece of trash American that doesn't like to work and we hate you. When you get rid of those programs, people's overall costs go up. So you can save them $500 to $700 in a year for tax breaks. But when their costs of living, when their costs of groceries, when their costs of their health care goes up by thousands, the amount of money that they actually have to pay out versus what they take in, as we're firing people and this job market is going horrible, the reasons he wanted to fire that Bureau of Labor Statistics commissioner, as all those things happen, what happens with regular Americans who have a limited amount of money, unlike the people who pay her to lie like this, they lose out. They have less money. As you take away these programs that help them. And the poorest of the poor folks in the country have to deal with it even worse because they depend on those programs even more. And as those are pulled off from under them, there's nothing left except for death and homelessness. But this, but they're the party of family values. I got more on Lisa. His name is Lisa McClain. She talked about the Texas gerrymandering situation as well. In case I'm sure you guys have heard about this. Texas state Democrats have left the state, gone to multiple other states, specifically Illinois, a bit of a safe haven to get away from this vote as they're trying to gerrymander this state to literally eliminate competition because of their horrible policies. Right now, as they're seeing these poll numbers that they say are the best ever for Donald Trump, they're trying to do something about it. And Lisa McClain, on her lying streak, decided to talk about that as well. Check this out.
Texas Republicans are arguing their redistricting push is about making the state more competitive. But you heard the president there say the quiet part out loud that he believes the GOP is, quote, entitled to 5 more House seats. Which is it?
Yeah, well, of course, I'm going to side with the president. Listen, I think what we're doing is right, is we need to have more representation. And I do believe the president is right. And I don't think what we're doing is breaking the law. We are just, for the first time in a long time, playing the same game as the Democrats have played for years. And quite frankly, they don't like it and they're not used to it. So we'll see how this turns out. But at the end of the day, I hope we pick up 5 more seats, right? I hope we pick up more seats in other places because our policies are what's going to win us the seats as well. Not just the seats, but it's our policies, Wolf.
The White House.
Did you guys see how she said both things in that one answer? She said, in response to Donald Trump saying, we are entitled to 5 more seats in Texas. Entitled in a democracy, in a representative democracy where people vote you in or not. And by the way, I don't know if they realize this. If people who normally vote conservative versus maybe people who normally vote more Democratic, if they want to vote the other way, they can. There's no entitlement to any seats. If you're not representing your people the way Representative Mike Flood is no longer doing, or probably never was, they can vote his ass out without being called people that were bussed in from other parts of the state. But again, in this representative, the legislator that we're supposed to have, they're entitled to more seats. That sounds like a dictator wanting to manipulate things to make sure he gets things that he wants, not based on the people who voted for them. But she agrees because, Donald Trump is our messiah. And as they're entitled to more seats, she hopes that they pick them up, not only because of that, but because of their agenda. Which one is it, Lisa? If your agenda is going to win the day, you should just rely on your agenda. But you guys are hell-bent on gerrymandering this state because your agenda sucks. And people are telling you, your agenda sucks. And as they hear that story, that their agenda sucks from the people who will vote them out, they say, let's make sure those people can't vote us out anymore. All you have to do is listen for like a minute and 5 seconds and hear the way that they don't really answer the question, or they answer both ways to hope that people won't understand what is it they're saying. She's continuing on. Lisa McClain kept going. So they was continuing to talk about this gerrymandering process and the way that these Democrats have taken off from the state. And this is more of her answer.
I just keep going back to it. We didn't make the rules of the game. We're just, for the first time in a long time, playing by the rules of the game. And
but the rules of the game,
and they're very uncomfortable.
Congresswoman, with all due respect, the rules of the game always traditionally have been after a census. Every 10 years, there's a new census in the United States. That's when you can redraw the districts based on where the populations have evolved to. This is a new deal now. In the middle will be, there's no decade new census now. They're just doing it now, Republicans. I don't think the Democrats have actually done it in advance so many years ahead of a new census.
Yeah, I wish you'd put up the Illinois map as well. That's a good map to show as well. But with all due respect, and I appreciate that argument, Wolf, is there's nothing that says we can't do it now. It's just we are doing it now. And President Trump, as you know, is bold, is aggressive, and he's playing within his purview. And that's it. He's not doing anything wrong. He's trying to right size what has been wronged for so long, right? Massachusetts, let's talk about Maryland, let's talk about Illinois. He's bold, he's aggressive, and he is going to fight for the Republican Party. That's his job, and that's exactly what he's doing. And I applaud him for doing so.
It is not the president's job to fight for the Republican Party by any means necessary and eliminate the rest of Americans' rights to vote. Absolutely not, and their right to their representation. But he's bold and he's aggressive. Again, she started off, I wrote it down. She starts off by saying that they're just doing things right and doing things in response to what Democrats always do, except for the fact that she didn't want to point out that the most advantageous states from their gerrymandering, because yes, I've mentioned this, both parties gerrymander. And the most advantageous of this gerrymandering is, of course, from Republicans who have fewer numbers of people in the country by population that vote for them. So to even that out, it's already put in their favor with the Electoral College for presidential levels. But then when it comes to where these guys end up getting voted in, they continue to gerrymander the states every time they need an opportunity to gain more seats. The way that they've run states where there's a governor that's a Democrat and the leadership would have been voted in with the numbers of people that live there that represent Democrats, the most gerrymandered states are Republican states. Illinois is definitely one of the worst as well, where Pritzker, Governor Pritzker up there, the Democrat, runs that state. Yes, there's Democrat gerrymandered states. But the way that they're talking about this as if they've never done this, and now we're just responding finally when Donald Trump openly said we're entitled to 5 more seats, not because of my agenda, but because I need to take more seats. It kind of takes the whole wool off of what should be everyone's eyes into seeing through these lies that she's trying to tell folks. But, you know, they deserve those seats because they can do it. Now, by the way, that was the last part. I'm sorry, I missed this part. There's supposed to be a change of these gerrymandered, or at least in a nicer term, redistricting of these states after 10-year census. First, she says that they're doing by the rules. Then after Wolf Blitzer, I'm glad, finally brought up, yo, but you guys are doing it after a couple of years. Well, that's just because we can do it. The goalposts shift every time a question is asked and exposes their hypocrisy. And the question after that should be, well, why did you just tell me that you're playing by the rules when you just told me after I asked you why you're not playing by the rules that you get to not play by the rules? There's other folks. In fact, there's a state rep Mitch Little from Texas. They get way more explicit about this idea that they can do whatever the hell they want because Donald Trump is an authoritarian.
The timing of this, can you talk to me about this? Why do this in a census off year when you just redistricted in 2021?
Because we can. We have the votes. It's legal for us to do so. It's legal for us to draw the lines based on political performance. We have 3 Hispanic predominated districts in South Texas that we believe that we can carve out for Republican leadership in the United States Congress. It's going to be a good thing for Texas. I don't spend any time thinking about what happens in California, Illinois, or New York. I'm here to protect Texas and ensure that our voices are heard.
So because you can, why should you though?
Because it's good for our party, it's good for our state, and we need to ensure that Donald Trump's agenda continues to be enacted throughout his second term. And we as Republicans see this as the difference between Democrats trying to impeach President Trump again during the second half of his final term as president of the United States, or accomplishing the agenda that all the voters in Texas by a significant majority sent him to accomplish.
So you're doing this for President Trump?
We're doing this for Texas. President Trump doesn't call me. I don't think he has my phone number. But what I would submit to you is this is the best thing for Texas and its representation in the United States Congress.
The goalposts keep moving. He went through 3 different levels of why this is important, but the first one is the most telling because that's when he's being the most honest. Because we can. We're doing this just because we can. I really hope that they would change the rules so that nobody can do this anymore once things are actually written in a way that represents the majority of the people in this country so that we can continue to move forward because we're stagnant. In fact, we're going backwards right now. He said, because we have districts that are not advantageous for our party. They don't represent Americans. They represent their party. And when their party is led by Donald Trump, who represents himself, they then represent Donald Trump. The Republican Party represents Donald Trump. It's why there's been so many instances where people who previously thought they were voting for Donald Trump because he was going to help them and found out that he gave them middle fingers instead. They said, wow, I didn't vote for this. I voted for something you're going to help me. He said, no, you didn't. This is a dictatorship, bro. You voted for me to do whatever the hell I want to do. Mitch Little wasn't even done yet. After that, Breonna Taylor asked him, wait, so you're doing this for Donald Trump? No, we're doing this for Texas. How many times is he going to switch his answer to why they're doing this? Because we can, because we're focused on our party only, because we're doing it for Donald Trump. I mean, we're doing it for Texans. Bro, Texans are in the state right now raging over some of these things that you're talking about. Here's another Texas state representative. His name is Brian Harrison. Man, they're getting more and more blatant with the way they're talking about their desire to be this authoritarian party.
It's past time we redraw these maps. These Democrats need to be punished. This is what the voters that I work for in Texas want, and it's what I'm fighting for.
So if that's what you're saying, we have President Trump who just got the big, beautiful bill passed. He's kept the promise on his mass deportation efforts. You say this is what patriotic Americans want. If that is the case, why do you need to redraw the maps to do it? Can you not just sell what the president and your party has done over the last 2 years to win the midterm?
Did you ask Governor Pritzker that question when he drew?
I didn't talk to Governor Pritzker.
No, I want to know this. I want to know this.
I didn't talk to Governor
anybody
Pritzker.
on your show ask Governor Pritzker to defend his map when he gerrymandered his map?
If we had Governor Pritzker on the show, we would ask him that, Representative. But we're talking to you today, so I'm asking.
No, but
why
he did his map
redraw the
2
maps
years
if you
ago.
can't
He did his
sell
map 2
your
years ago. Hang on.
ideas?
Do you know what percentage of a Republican vote goes on in Illinois? What percentage statewide?
I don't have that number off the top of my head.
I can tell you 45%. 45%. Do you know what percentage of the congressional delegation is Republicans under his map?
I don't, sir. I'm not asking. I'm not talking about Illinois politics. I'm asking you about Texas politics. State Representative, we appreciate your time on here. I guess if you can't just put a.
Did you hear what he said at the beginning there? These Democrats need to be punished. That's the basis for their political purview. That's the basis for anything that they do. Because Donald Trump, from his first time he ran for president in 2015, 2016, was all about retribution, going after people, burying people. It was all about power and control. And now as they're all smiling like some jokers behind him saying, yeah, we're the authoritarian party. Let's punish them. Not let's represent the people. Not let's continue to advance our agenda that people are happy with. Because as this agenda continues to get implemented, more and more people are like, what the hell? These small business owners, these large business owners, Ford, Chevy, they're losing money as you lie to their faces. So because people are realizing that, what people like this guy have to do is say they need to be punished and we can do whatever we want. And did you know that J.B. Pritzker's doing the same thing too? Let's talk about what J.B. Pritzker's doing up there in Illinois, because that's where many of the Texas Democrats went as they're avoiding this vote so that they can't implement this redistrict gerrymandered map. So Pritzker was actually asked about this. This is from NBC News. Since he brought it up, let's bring it up, because yes, Illinois is one of the most gerrymandered states, and I believe there's like 2 or 3 of them out of like the 10 worst in the country that are democratically gerrymandered in their favor. But they're not going to bring that point up. They're just trying to add another one to the list because this is not the first time Republicans have done something like this. Here's J.B. Pritzker being asked about his state being gerrymandered in favor of Democrats. Pritzker said on Sunday that they're attempting to cheat, again, talking about Texas. And he said it's long been criticized for having been gerrymandered by Democrats, his state, who now have a 14-3 congressional advantage in that state. He contended that there's a difference here. He said, you're talking about the outcome. The fact that we are very good in Illinois about delivering for the people of Illinois, and then people react to that and vote for our candidate winning is very different than cheating mid-decade by rewriting the rule because their cult leader told them to do it. It's it's splitting a couple hairs there. The difference being in JB Pritzker's mind, it's their redistricting happened after people voted them in, and then they said this is the representation of the state at this kind of degree because of the way that we've been put in place. Donald Trump is watching his agenda that people don't like. This is the difference that Pritzker's trying to make. Democrats put an agenda that people do like in the state. After they do it, he redistricts and gerrymanders, which he shouldn't do. Then Donald Trump is looking up and going, Jesus, we're about to get our asses kicked like my name is Mike Flood. And then he's going to do it ahead of time to make sure they don't lose the seats they would have lost because of the agenda. It's a small difference, but it's a difference. And honestly, I think there should be rules in place that keep them from doing this once things are redrawn to actually benefit both all these folks who honestly should have a voice. Here's more from that quote from Pritzker, again from NBC. So when asked if potential efforts by California Governor Gavin Newsom and New York Governor Kathy Hochul, also Democrats, would also be cheating if they take similar action to match Texas as they have suggested, Pritzker then said, remember, all bets are off. All bets are when the cult leader and would-be dictator tells Texas to midstream change the game when they know they're going to lose in 2026. All bets are off. Everything's got to be on the table. To that point, you have to start fighting back when people are literally implementing fascist policies that the majority of Americans are looking at and realizing that they're fascist policies and they want nothing to do with it. Or as people are losing their jobs, their homes, their health care, their incomes, and their rights. That's what's happening in the country. So there has to be some kind of protection for the attacks that this party that represents Donald Trump is making on the American people. How about we in that whole gerrymandering thing? How about that? Maybe that's the answer. If that happens, Republicans will never win because their policies and agenda suck. And after that happens, people vote them out, and they have no other way of going about of regaining those votes outside of changing who votes in what areas. And if Democrats lose, they're going to have to change the way they go about things because the majority of the country votes. And if they have to win, they have to appeal to them. And that's been the problem with Democrats recently. They're not appealing to the majority of people. They've been in the bed with establishment folks and getting paid off the same way Republicans do by the same entities of these billionaires that pay them to do their bidding. Not sure if you knew that part. That's why, there's this fracture within the Democratic Party between the establishment folks and folks who actually represent the people who vote now folks in. And they want to make sure they suppress the radical Democrats. How you guys doing today? How's it been? Oh, we got up like 180 people watching. That's crazy. Who knew? On a random time when you guys didn't know I was going to jump in here and scream like this in the middle of this hot August heat. Why isn't the AC on in here? Either way it goes. Glad you guys were here. Oh, who's from the morning showed up? That's pretty much for you. Oh, Abby Normal, good to see you as well. Some of the common names: Christina, Elisa Brown. Yes, good to see you guys. Henry D. Absolutely. Maybe you guys tell me where I'm wrong. Because like I said, on the gerrymandering thing, I think there are issues with gerrymandering across the country. So I'm open to that. You guys don't forget, go over to Instagram. I'm very active over there. I'm very much responsive over there. Come shoot me some messages. Let me know what you guys want to see us talk about here. Maybe your thoughts on some of the things that we said here. But also, if you're going to go that far, and go over and follow me, of course, over on Instagram as well. I post a lot of things that come to mind that I don't necessarily say here. Go ahead and tell people about our stream, about the watch party. It's every day. It's late today, but it'll be on again tomorrow at noon Eastern and 9 o'clock Pacific time for you guys on other parts of the country. Good to see you guys. Glad you were here. Let me go try and put a couple of these things up and get some things done today. We'll talk later, okay? All right.